March 9th, 1943 North Atlantic, 200 miles west of Ireland. The sea was calm, too calm. In the grey morning light, the conning tower of U-404 cut through the waves like the fin of a lurking predator. Inside the narrow steel hull, the air hung thick with diesel fumes and sweat. The men of the Kriegsmarine submarine, led by Captain Lieutenant Otto von Bülow, had grown used to this rhythm: hunt, strike, disappear. For 2 years, the Atlantic had been their domain, a place where they reigned unseen. But this morning, something felt different. Hydrophones picking up propeller noise. Bearing 285, reported Matrosengerfreiter Ernst Bauer, his ear pressed against the listening device. Otto frowned. The sound was faint, erratic, not the steady pulse of a merchant convoy. He gave a nod. Periscope depth. Let's have a look. The periscope rose silently, slicing through the surface. Otto squinted through the eyepiece. Nothing but empty ocean, gray sky, gray waves. But the feeling persisted, that crawling sensation of being watched. Over the past months, whispers had circulated through U-Boat Command about new Allied weapons, new tactics, rumors of aircraft that could see through the clouds, destroyers that hunted like wolves of their own. The Atlantic, once vast and empty, had become alive with unseen eyes. Suddenly, a burst of static cracked over the radio, then a chilling message. Convoy HX 229 heavily escorted. Air cover reported out of Iceland. Otto clenched his jaw. We attack at night. Prepare the eels. The crew moved with quiet precision. Torpedo tubes were loaded. Depth gauge needles trembled. Somewhere above, an American B-24 Liberator thundered through the clouds, its radar antenna glinting in the sun. It scanned the waves below and found a faint shape slicing through the water. Inside U-404, no one heard the whine of the approaching aircraft. Then came the roar. Depth charges exploded into the sea, turning the calm Atlantic into a boiling cauldron. The submarine lurched violently, lights flickering out. Men shouted in the dark as water sprayed from ruptured pipes. Seal it off. Schnell, Otto barked. The Atlantic had turned on them. As the boat sank deeper, groaning under pressure, Otto realized what had changed. The enemy had learned their language, the sea's rhythm, the hunt's pattern. For the first time, the hunters were being hunted. March 10th, 1943 North Atlantic, 170 meters below the surface. Darkness pressed against the hull like a living thing. U-404 creaked and moaned as the men sat in silence, listening. Every sound, every groan of metal, every drop of water carried the promise of death. The depth charge barrage had ended minutes ago, but the echoes still pulsed in their ears. Some of the younger sailors trembled, their hands clutching prayer pendants or family photos. Chief Engineer Hans Metzger crouched beside the bilge pumps, voice low but steady, pressure holding. We're alive for now. Otto von Bülow sat at the plotting table, staring at the damage report. Stern batteries half gone, ballast tank leaking, periscope optics cracked. He rubbed his temples. Surface is suicide, he muttered. But if we stay down too long. The air was already thick and sour. Condensation dripped from the pipes overhead, landing on men's faces like cold sweat. Diesel fumes, oil, and fear filled the compartment. Somewhere aft, someone began humming softly the old sailor's tune. We are fahren gegen England. It had once been a song of pride. Now it sounded like a dirge. Hydrophone contact destroyer, bearing 170, closing fast, Bauer whispered. Otto's stomach turned. The enemy was using ASDIC sonar, sending sound waves that bounced off the hull like ghostly knocks in the dark. Every ping was a heartbeat, counting down to the next strike. Ping, ping, ping. Silent running, Otto ordered. Cut all motors. The hum of machinery faded. Now, only the soft creak of metal filled the silence. The destroyer's screws churned above closer, then fading, then closer again. Otto imagined the British captain, coffee in hand, listening for the faintest echo, his destroyer gliding like a shark above them. He wondered if the man felt the same chill he did. For hours, they drifted. Every man aboard U-404 aged a decade in that time. When the sonar pings finally faded, relief swept through the crew like oxygen. But Otto didn't relax. He had seen the new Allied tactics, sonar, radar, aircraft patrols that stretched hundreds of miles. The Atlantic had become a net of steel and sound. Surface after nightfall, he said finally. We'll make for Biscay, slowly. As the crew nodded and began their work, Otto stared at the condensation-covered walls. The ocean used to hide them. Now it betrayed them. April 2nd, 1943, Bay of Biscay, dawn. A gray light breaks over the water as U-404 surfaces. The diesel engines roar to life, coughing smoke into the cold Atlantic air. Salt spray hits the faces of the watch crew as they emerge from the hatch, blinking against the blinding horizon. Oberleutnant Karl Bauer scans the sky through his binoculars. The ocean stretches endlessly calm, deceptive, almost serene. Clear, he reports, his voice carrying over the wind. Otto von Bülow climbs up beside him, coat flapping. His face is gaunt, skin pale from weeks without sunlight. Signal to Lorient, he says. Tell them we're coming home. The radio man nods, raising the antenna. A soft hum fills the air. Then a faint engine sound. At first distant, then louder. Aircraft, Bauer shouts, bearing northeast fast. Every man snaps to motion. Crash dive. Schnell, schnell, Otto bellows. Klaxons wail as sailors scramble down the ladder. Valves hiss, ballast tanks flood. The hull groans under the sudden change of pressure. Outside, the distant roar of engines becomes a thunderous scream. Through the periscope, Otto catches a glimpse of B-24 Liberator. Sunlight glinting off its wings. Diving low, bomb bay doors open. Then the sea erupts. Depth charges crash into the water, geysers rising like fists. The U-boat lurches violently. Lights flicker. Men are thrown from their stations. One of the engines cuts out. Steam hisses from a ruptured pipe. Depth, 60 meters descending. Someone yells. Otto grips the periscope handles, jaw tight. The old days of silent, invisible hunting are gone. Now, even the sky above the Atlantic has turned against them. In the control room, Chief Metzger fights to keep the ballast balanced. Port tank flooding, pump it or we'll roll. The sound of metal under strain fills the compartment like the groaning of a dying beast. The explosions fade, replaced by the relentless churning of propellers above. Then silence. Men breathe again, barely. Someone mutters a prayer. Otto closes his eyes, feeling the tremor of fear in his fingertips. He knows this was no chance encounter. The Allies are everywhere now, their planes refueled by mid-ocean carriers, their ships guided by radar, their torpedoes growing smarter. The Atlantic, once a hunter's paradise, has become a killing ground. Otto looks around at his weary men, young, pale faces smeared with oil and sweat. He forces his voice steady. Gentlemen, he says quietly, from now on the ocean belongs to them. The words hang in the air like a death sentence. April 9th, 1943, Bletchley Park, England. Rain patters softly on the slate roofs of the old mansion. Inside, the air hums with the sound of typewriters and clattering rotors. Young women in uniform pass along strips of coded text fragments intercepted from the Atlantic, each carrying the cold pulse of war beneath the waves. At a desk near the center, Alan Turing leans over a sheet of paper. His pencil moves quickly, almost nervously. Around him, the great machines, bombs whir and click, spinning through endless combinations of letters. Signal decrypted, a voice calls out. The room quiets. Another day, another secret torn from the Atlantic's depths. The message reads, U-404 departing Lorient, returning to patrol grid AM 52. Turing adjusts his spectacles. Forward that to Coastal Command, he says quietly. They'll want eyes over the Bay of Biscay by morning. Across the channel, Otto von Bülow's crew prepares for another sortie, unaware that their precise position now lives in the hands of mathematicians hundreds of miles away. April 10th, 1943, Atlantic Operations Room, Western Approaches Command. Maps cover the walls, dotted with pins and string lines tracing convoy routes. Beneath a haze of cigarette smoke, officers in Royal Navy blue gather around a glowing table. Gentlemen, says Admiral Max Horton, his voice measured but sharp, we have confirmation. Ultra intercepts place U-404 here, moving northwest at 7 knots. Coastal Command aircraft are already en route. A young RAF officer points at the map. Liberator Group 120 can intercept within 6 hours, sir. Horton nods. Good. Make it happen. He looks up at the men, tired, haggard, but burning with the same quiet resolve that has turned the tide. We've lost too many to the wolf packs, he says. It's time the wolves start drowning. April 11th, 943 North Atlantic, 220 miles west of Ireland. The sea is calm again, deceptively calm. U-404 runs surfaced, charging batteries under the thin grey daylight. Otto steps out onto the bridge, coat collar pulled high, binoculars raised. Nothing but the endless roll of the Atlantic. But above the clouds, invisible to the naked eye, two B-24 Liberators prowl on radar guidance, sweeping the waves in coordinated arcs. Inside the cockpit of Liberator BZ-774, Flight Lieutenant James Jock Fairweather taps his radar screen. Contact faint, bearing 175. The co-pilot squints. Could be a wave return. Fairweather shakes his head. No, that's steel. He thumbs the radio. Bandit sighted, going in. Engines roar as the Liberator dives, breaking through the clouds. Down below, Otto hears it again, that growing hum, distant but unmistakable. His stomach tightens. Crash dive. But it's too late. The first depth charge hits the water just off their stern. The ocean shudders. Then another, and another. Inside, chaos. The lights flicker and die. Seawater bursts from a cracked pipe, spraying the control room. Damage control! Engines to emergency power, Otto shouts. Chief Metzger struggles to keep the trim level. Pressure hull, holding for now. The U-boat dives deeper, creaking, moaning like it might split apart. Up above, Fairweather circles back for a second pass. We've got him. Mark the position, he's going down. Through the mist and smoke, the Liberator drops its final pattern of charges. The sea swallows them, then boils violently as one final eruption tears through the surface. A black stain spreads across the grey Atlantic. Fairweather's gunner watches silently. Poor devils, he mutters. Fairweather exhales, eyes fixed on the dying turbulence below. That's for the Jessup convoy, he says quietly, and banks away toward the west. Far beneath the waves, U-404 settles into darkness, one more steel coffin in the graveyard of the Atlantic. In Bletchley Park, a clerk files away the decrypted message, stamping it closed. Another victory, unseen, unheard, but decisive. The Battle of the Atlantic has turned. The hunters have become the hunted. May 1943 North Atlantic, grid position AK 187. Night falls heavy over the convoy lanes, a vast stretch of black water, pierced only by the faint glow of phosphorescent plankton. Below the surface, U-305 drifts silently, like a wounded predator. Diesel fumes hang in the stale air, mingling with sweat and fear. Oberleutnant Jürgen Marx, 27 years old and already a decorated ace, stands before the periscope. His eyes, hollowed by months of sleepless patrols, track a distant flicker, the silhouette of a destroyer sweeping its searchlight across the waves. Hydrophone reports? He asks. The sound operator listens, eyes shut. Multiple screws closing fast. 3, maybe 4 ships. Marx nods grimly. The convoy's escorts are tightening their circle. He's hunted before, but now the sea itself seems to conspire against him. He lowers the periscope and mutters, "We used to be ghosts." Above the waves, the British destroyer HMS Duncan cuts through the dark radar antennae spinning. The ship's operator calls out, "Surface contact, bearing 035, distance 1,200 yards. Action stations," comes the reply. Sirens wail, men scramble, guns swivel toward the target. Within seconds, star shells burst across the sky, their white light spreading over the waves like daybreak. For a brief, terrible instant, Mark sees his own reflection in the periscope, pale, tired, and doomed. Flank speed, dive to 150 meters. The U-boat pitches down. Hull plates groan. Mugs tumble from racks as the crew brace for impact. Boom! Depth charges erupt above. Boom! Water hammers the hull like a giant's fist. The lights flicker red. One man crosses himself. Another sobs quietly. Marx grips the railing. Steady, she'll hold. But in truth, even he no longer believes it. Hours later, the attack has passed. Silence returns, but it is not peace, only exhaustion. The control room reeks of oil and fear. Condensation drips from every surface. The U-boat drifts crippled, batteries drained, crew half-conscious. Marx looks at the faces around him, boys, most of them clutching their rosaries, their keepsakes, their last letters home. "We surface at dawn," he says quietly. "We'll transmit our position. Chief Petty Officer Weber looks at him sharply. Sir, the Allies will triangulate our signal within minutes. I know. Then why? Because Marx interrupts, voice low but steady. No one should die down here. Not like this. For a long moment, no one speaks. The air hums faintly with the sound of the hull expanding as the depth lessens. When they finally breach the surface, dawn paints the Atlantic in bruised colors, gray, red, gold. Marx steps out onto the conning tower, feeling the wind for the first time in days. His face is streaked with oil and salt. Behind him, his men stand silently. He takes the transmitter in his hand and keys the message. U-305 position compromised. Crew abandoning patrol. He drops the mic, staring out at the horizon. There, on the edge of sight, another ship's silhouette rises. The destroyer's guns glint in the morning light. He whispers, almost to himself, "The ocean used to hide us." He closes his eyes. Now it buries us. Moments later, HMS Duncan opens fire. Shells rip through the waves. The sea blooms with smoke and flame. U-305 rolls once, twice, and vanishes beneath the surface forever. In the operations room in Londonderry, an officer marks a red X on the Atlantic map. One more U-boat gone. The wolves are dying faster than they can be built. Across the sea, in Lorient, Admiral Karl Dönitz receives the report. His jaw tightens. He says nothing, just stares out at the harbor, where new submarines line the docks, gleaming, incomplete, already obsolete. He knows the truth now. The war beneath the waves is lost. June 1943, Lorient, France. Rain lashes the submarine pens as Admiral Karl Dönitz walks along the concrete catwalk. His boots splash through puddles blackened by oil and soot. The Atlantic wind carries the distant rumble of Allied bombers, another raid somewhere down the coast. Below him, the skeletons of new U-boats rest in their cradles. Welders work feverishly, sparks flying like fireflies in the gloom. Yet for all their labor, there's a stillness, the kind of silence that follows when men begin to realize that the tide cannot be turned. A young officer rushes up, saluting sharply. "Mein Admiral, latest losses. 7 boats this week. 2 of them didn't even make it past the Bay of Biscay." Dönitz nods without looking at the report. "And the convoys? Still moving, still guarded." He exhales slowly, the sound almost drowned by the hammering rain. Then the Atlantic is no longer ours. That same week, in Bletchley Park, England, code breakers in dimly lit rooms celebrate quietly. Another Enigma key cracked. Another wolf pack intercepted. In the shadows, a naval officer murmurs, "They have no idea how naked they are." The Battle of the Atlantic, once a chess game between hunters and hunted, has become a massacre of mathematics. Far out at sea, U-615 drifts under moonlight. Inside, the men are ghosts, pale, hollow-eyed, their uniforms damp and threadbare. The diesel engines cough with every rotation. "Hydrophones picking up aircraft," says the radio man. The commander, Captain Lieutenant Ernst Müller, doesn't even react. He's seen the liberators before. He's watched their floodlights cut through the night like divine judgment. He orders quietly, "Crash dive." The boat plunges beneath the surface, descending into blackness. But this time, the enemy is already waiting. Ping, ping. The sonar echoes through the hull like a heartbeat. Then boom. Depth charges blossom around them. The lights fail. Inside the U-boat, screams echo through smoke and steam. Men claw for handholds as the deck tilts violently. A pipe bursts. Scalding water sprays across the control room. Müller grips the periscope base, shouting, "Blow ballast, surface, surface, damn it." The U-boat surges upward, coughing air and fire. When the hatch bursts open, the Atlantic greets them with fire and light. A Liberator circles overhead, its silhouette black against the rising sun. The commander watches the bombs fall, almost calmly. One detonates 50 meters off the bow, then another, closer. Metal screams. A final blast tears the hull apart, sending the men tumbling into freezing water. Hours later, the wreckage of U-615 drifts across the waves. Oil spreads in slick, rainbow patches on the surface. A single life raft bobs amid the debris. Inside, 3 survivors cling to life. Their faces are gray, their eyes glassy. One whispers through cracked lips, "It's the sea. It's turned against us. No one answers. Above, the Liberator circles once more, not to attack, but to mark the position for rescue. Then it turns away, leaving only the wind and the waves to finish the story. By late 1943, the Atlantic, once the graveyard of Allied hopes, becomes the graveyard of the U-boat fleet. Of the 1,155 submarines sent into the deep, over 700 never return. Tens of thousands of German sailors vanish beneath the waves. Each boat leaves behind not just wreckage, but echoes faint signals, trapped in the static of time. And in the words of a survivor decades later, we thought we ruled the ocean, but the ocean never belonged to us. Spring 1944, North Atlantic, coordinates 48 degrees north, 22 degrees west. The ocean is calm, almost unnaturally so. The sun cuts a pale silver line across the horizon, glinting off scattered oil slicks and the rising shadows of wrecks beneath the waves. Somewhere below, the steel carcass of U-432 rests on the seabed, its hull torn open like a ribcage. Silt drifts through the interior like slow-moving snow. A child's photograph, laminated in plastic, floats above the captain's desk. The ink has bled, but the smile remains. It's not a battlefield anymore. It's a cemetery one the sea keeps for itself. Meanwhile, aboard HMS Tracker, a Royal Navy escort carrier, Lieutenant Andrew Whitley leans against the rail, binoculars pressed to his eyes. The convoy stretches endlessly across the water merchant ships in staggered rows, trailed by destroyers like watchful wolves. A young sailor approaches him. "Sir, do you think they're still out there?" Whitley lowers the binoculars. "The U-boats?" He pauses, eyes scanning the water. "They're always out there. You just don't see them until it's too late." But deep down, he knows the truth. The hunters have become shadows, scattered and blind. Their signals intercepted before they ever reach their prey. The Battle of the Atlantic has turned into a war of ghosts. In occupied France, the once proud U-boat pens at Lorient and Saint-Nazaire echo with emptiness. The air smells of rust and oil. Engineers dismantle broken turbines, their tools clanging against cold steel. A single radio crackles with Donitz's latest broadcast, his voice steady but hollow. Every man who goes to sea now does so, knowing the risk, but Germany still needs her sailors. His words hang in the air like smoke. No one answers. Outside, Allied bombers thunder overhead, their formations stretching across the sky like a mechanical swarm. The concrete shelters tremble. Dust drifts down from the rafters, covering the workbenches and the worn helmets left behind by men who will never return. At sea, U-978 creeps through the fog. The air inside is sour with sweat and diesel fumes. Condensation beads drip from the pipes, falling onto the logbook, the pages warped and stained. The helmsman whispers, "Hydrophone contact, multiple propellers, fast approach." The captain doesn't look up. His face is gaunt, eyes sunken. Silent running. The engines die to a murmur. The crew holds their breath. Every sound, every heartbeat feels deafening. Then it comes, the ping. That relentless, merciless sound of Allied sonar. The captain closes his eyes. He knows what follows. The first explosion rocks the hull. Dust falls from the ceiling. The lights flicker. Another blast, then another. Water sprays through a crack in the bow. Men scramble, shouting, praying. And then, silence again. Only the ocean's pressure crushing. Eternal remains. Above, aboard the British destroyer HMS Byron, sailors peer over the railing as an oil slick blooms across the surface. A few pieces of debris float by a life jacket, a boot, a fragment of hull plating marked with the faded numbers, U-978. The ship's captain lowers his cap. God help them. The sea ripples, calm once more. By mid-1944, the Kriegsmarine is a shadow of its former self. Where once wolf packs hunted the Atlantic in coordinated strikes, now isolated U-boats drift helplessly into the abyss, cut off from command, strangled by Allied intelligence. Even the ocean seems to reject them. The currents carry their wrecks to deeper waters, away from sight, away from memory. And as the Allies prepare for D-Day, the Battle of the Atlantic, once the longest and most brutal campaign of the war, fades beneath the thunder of a new invasion. But the sailors who fought there are not forgotten. Their graves lie in silence, beneath the waves that swallowed them. The ocean keeps their story. And sometimes, when the sonar pings echo through the deep, you might imagine the faintest reply.